In this podcast, you get a real-life glimpse into a student's transformation. I take you into the actual coaching sessions, week by week, and you can see the student's progress in real time. So without further ado, here is AGL Live. In this episode, I break down Honeysuckle's footage that we took from the night before, which was July 14th. Today is July 15th, 2 days after I initially met with Honeysuckle. So we pick up where we left off, where we go out to a San Francisco nightclub, and Honeysuckle spends 2 hours in the field while I break it down. That's why I say things like that a lot, where I'll mention a correction, but then I'll also say like it's fine, or like what you did was totally fine. I mean, part of that is just that mentality, where it's like let it go. I mean, you did the best you could in that situation. Yeah. And if you have that while you're talking to the person too, then your interactions will be much more present. It'll go much smoother. Yeah. Because you're gonna be in there.
So that's the thing is like, when the set is going well, you have to double down at some point. You don't want to play it safe. Don't play not to lose, play to win.
Yeah, that's another thing is like, I think because it was going well initially in the initial conversation, that's why you had this anxiety about going back and fucking up what you already had going for you. Yeah. But at the end of the day, like, you're probably not going to see her again if you don't do anything about it now. Yeah. So that's why I say like double down, because so what ends up happening is like the ego seeps in, and it's like, oh shit, like I have to preserve what I have already. I don't want to lose this. Like I have a good reputation right now with her. Yeah. And then just breaking through that, being present. I say that a lot, but it's like, don't think so much about what she's going to think of you. Think about like, oh, we're having an amazing time. Let's keep this going. So that's the alternative way of thinking. And a lot of times when it comes to leading, it's easiest for me if I think of like it's just us two going on an adventure. That's why like the whole beach thing, when I was like, hey, we should fucking do something right now, that was coming from a genuine place, because I'm like, we could either just stand here on the street or like fucking go somewhere. And then you added on to that and was like, we should go to the beach. You could create that experience every single night if you wanted to. Yeah. Like the possibilities are limitless. Once you have a connection with someone, then you can go on an adventure together. And inevitably, like, they're gonna...
Even if it's like 1 hour in after the club started?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, it could happen any time. I've had a lot of examples in Vegas where I've left the club at like 11:15. Maybe the very first person I talked to, I ended up like talking to them for 10 minutes. I'm like, hey, do you want to like go somewhere else? I mean, we go to the nightclub every night. Might as well explore something different on the strip. And then she's like, yeah, I don't really like nightclubs that much anyway. Yeah. And then we just leave. And then, yeah. And you never know until you just go for it. Right. And I actually, that's kind of one thing I look for too, is a girl who's willing to do that is a girl that I really get along with, because a girl who's adventurous is one that I really resonate with or I'm compatible with. Yeah. So yeah, that's another way to look for. I don't know if that's part of your value system as well, but that's a way to see if a girl is adventurous too. And for the sake of being adventurous, not just for the sake of pulling and having sex.
I was like just getting
Yeah, I think really important for me to like go to different clubs too because like it just gets me in the adventurous mood.
Hmm.
And if I keep going to like I kind of feel like if I go to like the same clubs every time, I feel more like I'm going there to game
Yeah,
than to have fun.
yeah. I mean, there's two parts to that. Like, yeah, it does. It can get you in an adventurous mood, and I think it's good to explore. Like, I get bored of the same clubs too.
Yeah,
So then that's why, like, for me, I made a list of the clubs I want to go to in Las Vegas
yeah,
on the Strip. But then also, like, even if you do go to the same clubs every night, then that kind of forces you to create an adventure out of thin air. Because you're going to get bored of watching Diplo 100 times at excess.
yeah,
So then that's why, like, for me, it's almost easier if it's a very familiar place because I'm like, well, I have to entertain myself somehow. So I'm gonna take this girl to the dance floor. I'm gonna show her around because I know the venue very well too. Um, and actually, like a good example was like 2 weeks ago, after I got off of work, one of my friends at the hostel, who's also into like RSD stuff, he's like, "Hey, do you want to go out?" I'm like, "Okay, sure." So we go out to the Wynn lobby, and we actually see two girls from the hostel, and I was like, "Oh, I dare you to do the reception speech on them." Because we have like a check-in speech. It's like, "Hey, welcome to Hostel Cat. What's the last name on the reservation?" And then I dared him to do that, so he went up and did that, and then we started talking to him for a bit. We're just standing there at Eastside Lounge, and I was like, "Hey, do you guys want to go explore?" And they're like, "Sure, yeah, why not?" So then I took him on a tour through the Wynn lobby, and we sat in the cafe, and then we ended up just walking the Strip. And I guess like technically from like a PUA standpoint, that's considered a pull.
yeah,
But if you just reframe it as like it's just us going on an adventure, then it becomes much less intimidating and much more fun.
yeah,
Same thing within the venue. It's like, hey, let's go dance. Let's go check out the DJ. Let's go check out the back bar. Just exploring the club, like two kids exploring a backyard.
yeah.
So that's what I think about in particular.
I guess another thing about pull is like because like people tell me like it's so ingrained in pickup culture to like never mention about going back to your place.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's kind of like associated to like it's a really shameful thing.
Yeah, it's kind of weird too.
But then like it's more about being empathetic, right?
Exactly. Like if you have enough empathy to their situation, it's
Yeah.
like, hey, I know I'm a complete stranger and we just met, but we can grab some drinks at my
Yeah.
place and then we'll have a good time or
But
whatever.
then in my mind emotionally like it kind of registers as like oh it's like I can't talk about it.
Yeah, it's like something that's bad.
Yeah.
And, yeah. And I
It
think
has to be really secretive.
yeah, so I guess the ultimate lesson is like there is no right and wrong way to do things.
Yeah.
Because
Like you could just say let's go back to my place, right? I mean like regardless of the results you would get.
yeah, for sure. You can do anything you want to.
Yeah.
Now, I guess in terms of like, but you do have to be empathetic to a certain extent as well, and yeah, it's going to be independent of results because there are going to be much fewer girls going to be willing to do that. But at the same time, though, that'll ensure that the girls that are coming back with you are
almost 100% DTF.
or they're just like they're compatible with you, like they're adventurous or independent. This is assuming that you actually do have a connection with her, because if she's just going back and you don't really have a connection, then it's kind of weird. It's like then she's kind of a sociopath. It was like you met for 5 minutes and she's just like crazy, and I don't know. You just have to read and react to the situation. Like it's all contextual. Because now that I think about it, like I have had girls where I met them for 5 minutes and we just leave, and they're not weird, but sometimes they are fucking crazy. So then you have to watch out for your own safety.
Really?
Yeah, but
Crazy is like they would kill you?
yeah, it's like I'm like there's something wrong with this girl. Like this one girl I pulled in LA. I met her on the street and I took her home to the apartment, and then there's just weird signs about her, and then we left really quickly too from the street. And yeah,
You think she was like prostitute or something?
I don't know, like I felt like she didn't have too much money because she just hung around the next day too.
Yeah.
And then she asked to borrow my phone, and then she was making ramen noodles, and I was like, okay, I think there's something off about this girl. But yeah, so I guess my main point though, if you did that without shame, then I think it would be totally fine. Like that's the biggest thing is being aware of your own shame. Like you can't micromanage what they're gonna do or what the result is gonna be because you can't control that. What you can't control is how you feel about it.
Yeah.
Like if in the moment you felt like just saying, hey, let's get out of here, let's go back to my place, and you actually felt that way.
Yeah.
And you just did it shamelessly, then that's totally fine.
Yeah.
But if it was like, but it's weird because sometimes you'll do the opposite thing where it's like you'll do it to prove to yourself that you can do it.
Yeah.
You'll say like, hey, let's go back.
Yeah, I know what that means.
Yeah, so just being self-aware and in tune with what you actually want is super key.
Yeah.
You guys look very lovely tonight. You guys look very lovely tonight. Thank you. Are you on a prom?
I feel like I just like slur my voice a lot. Did you
Yes.
notice that?
Sometimes. I don't think it's too bad. But how did you feel going into this one? You remember?
I forgot. I feel like I need to go listen to it more to see what it is.
Okay. Actually, let's just go back to the start of the conversation.
You guys look very lovely tonight. You guys look very lovely tonight. Are you on a prom? Did you go to prom tonight?
Yeah. So,
Oh, I remember this set.
yeah. So, how did you feel during the beginning part? Emotionally.
Nervous, because I knew it was like a couple set.
Mm-hmm. And then you kind of felt like you had to do it, I guess? Or...
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, because I told you. I guess that would make sense. But then there are certain symptoms, once again, because I think it's important to learn how to self-diagnose too. Because whenever someone asks you to repeat yourself, usually it's because you're trying to enter whatever they're talking about instead of just like bringing whatever you have to say. Because a lot of times, so I guess my point is like, if you actually wanted to start a conversation with someone, usually you'll get your point across without having to repeat yourself too much.
Yeah. I get that a lot.
Yeah. So it's because it's
I think it's more of a vocal thing or
like a vocal thing.
mindset.
I think it's more of a mindset because I think what happens is if you adjust the mindset, then your voice will live up to that.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with the very first. You're like very expressive, and you went in there without any sort of shame whatsoever. It was just like, your voice was loud, you're expressive,
Yeah.
and so your voice is just a product of your mindset.
True.
So I think that's like the general theme that I'm trying to get across too, is like these little corrections that pickup coaches generally make. They're just trying to fix the symptoms instead of fixing the cause.
Yeah.
The cause is where it's like the subconscious, like your
Yeah.
mindset. So there's other signs of this as well. Like sometimes, so I remember Max when I was in immersion, he talked about echoing. Basically, if you ask a girl a question like, where are you from? And she says, California. And then you repeat like, oh, California. Then that's echoing. And he said, stop doing echoing. But that's just treating the symptom. Like, even if you stop echoing, like...
You're still gonna run out of things to say or some shit like that.
Yeah, exactly. It's just gonna...
It's a filler word.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's just the symptom of the greater cause. And the actual fix, the deeper fix would be, just trusting yourself and then letting go. What we talked about before. Like, trusting that whatever you say is totally fine, and then letting go of needing to say the right or wrong thing.
Yeah. I kind of want to show you this video. that Todd talks about.
Mm-hmm.
He says the exact same thing. Like back in the days, like when we were like focusing on the outer game a lot.
Yeah.
He'd be like, we would list things that students were doing and tell them not to do.
Mm-hmm.
But then because they were so nervous about trying not to do those behaviors, like he would do all of those behaviors.
Yeah, I remember that. He cites that a lot because I think Owen had a list of like 21 things that you shouldn't do.
Yeah.
And then because they were anxious in field, they would do all of them.
Yeah. And I think it's this. But then he also talks about like really important stuff like outer game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because
conceptually about how to adopt these traits, how to become that irresistible man, and really, there's two different ways that people go about it, and neither one is completely good. So one is like the fake it till you make it, adopt the techniques method, and the other is the have it just purely come through your emotions, just get in a good state, and it'll come out of you naturally. So I'm going to talk about both of them. So the problem with the natural method, it makes a lot of sense, right? You get in a good state, you act, confident and abundant, and then, you get good feedback. That good social feedback leads to more confidence, more abundance, and, it spirals upwards from there. And there is definitely some truth to that. There definitely is. However, the problem in game is it's not quite as simple as all that, right? And there's two major problems. One major problem is what I call leveling. And the idea of leveling is that there's things that work with a certain caliber of girl, or in a certain social sort of situation, that don't work in a more advanced social situation with a higher caliber girl. Okay? So for example, if I were, I'm trying to do a demo that I can actually get on the camera. If I were to sit next to this guy here, say I'm going to do an approach while he's sitting down, right? Now, if I were to do hey, what's up? How you doing?
Good.
Right? That approach it conveys certain good qualities, right? It conveys a certain amount of confidence, for sure, right? It conveys that I'm not scared of doing the approach, right? It conveys maybe a good tone of voice, positive things like that, right? And so it's definitely indicating that I'm not a low value guy. It's indicating I'm not, if you're to rate guys on a scale from 1 to 10, I'm not a 4 or a 5. I'm above average, right? So maybe I'm a 6, 7, maybe 7.5, something like that, right? However, if that was my friend, most of the time I wouldn't approach like that. I just go up and say, hey, what's up, right? So I'm treating this person differently than I would a friend in a try hard way, right? In a way that's investing more energy, right? And so at the same time as it's indicating I'm not a 4 or a 5 as a guy, it's also indicating I'm not a 10 because it's not technically socially calibrated, right? And so what'll happen is if you do this type of...
that kind of coincides with you saying don't try so hard?
What? You said coincides?
Yeah.
In what sort of context?
When he was saying, hi, how's it going?
Yeah. So it's you're trying to bring a little bit more energy.
Yeah, yeah.
And he's saying that's a better open than not trying at all.
Yeah.
So this also goes back to assuming familiarity. So his point about where if you just went up and it's hey, what's up, with no energy, that's how you usually greet your friend. That's assuming familiarity. So that's why I said it's dangerous to think about assuming familiarity, because that's often what happens. It's you'll go in with too little energy, and that doesn't work when you're meeting a stranger.
Really?
Yeah, it's
Always? I think what it's trying to say is certain type of approach works for
no,
set of
that's
girls,
that's a different point. Yeah, leveling is basically where he talks about you have to adapt the way you approach according to the caliber of girl, or you have to adapt your game to the caliber of girl.
Yeah.
So with a level 10 girl, then you tease more, you break rapport, do some more provocative shit, and then with a level 6 girl, you can be more intentful. I'm pretty well versed in his theory about leveling.
Yeah.
But when it comes to assuming familiarity, that was the danger that when Owen says that, I think it's because I've done that before. That's why like I hesitate to recommend assuming familiarity, because it's like when I try to do that, then I just get weird reactions because they're like, "Who the fuck are you? Like, we don't know you."
Mm-hmm.
So it requires a certain degree of empathy, and part of that empathy is you have to bring something.
Yeah.
It's not like, so when I say energy, it's not all about like, "Hey, how's it going?" Like, that sort of energy. It's more like you have to bring something more than just like, "Hey, what's up?"
Yeah.
Generally, unless the other person, they're projecting energy themselves a lot of times. Like some girls are very outgoing and they're just like, "Oh, hey, what's up? Like, how's your night going?" But generally, if you're trying to talk to someone, you don't really want to talk to someone who's just like, "Hey," and they have nothing to say.
Yeah.
They just kind of stare at you. So that's like the whole assuming familiarity thing. Because also when you're familiar with someone, generally you don't need to say something all the time. Even if you're like, "Hey, what's up?" and you just kind of sit there together.
Yeah.
And there's like a silence. That works with a friend, but it doesn't really work if you're first meeting someone.
Right.
But yeah, we'll be watching this.
Approach with a girl that's like about a 7, she'll love you for it. Because if you're a 7 and she's a 7.5, or like maybe a 6, right? If you're a 6 and she's a 7, she's a 6 and you're a 7, 7.5, she's probably going to love you, right? In fact, she may even compliment you. She'll be like, "Oh, I love the way you came up and talked to me. It was so cool," right? Because it's an honest signal that you are at that level, right? And that's exactly what she's looking for. She's looking for that guy that's just a little bit above her. However, you do that same thing on a girl who's a 9, you give an honest signal you're a 7.5, she's just going to be like, "Sorry, I'm busy," right? Because you've given an honest signal you're beneath her in terms of social value, right? And so the funny thing is, if you learn game through these natural methods, like if it's pure natural without any theory or without any technique, the problem is that you're going to run into these leveling scenarios where what worked for a while stops working, and you don't know why. You can't like undo it. In fact, you've gotten specific positive feedback on it, so you explicitly think that it's one of the things in your game that is working, when now it's become the thing holding you back, right? So it's very, very, very insidious, right? The other thing, I'll get to it, the other thing that makes the natural approach not completely work is the idea of like counterintuitive behaviors, right? And so here the idea is that there are times in game where doing one thing feels good, and even like feels good after the fact, but it's not the right thing to do. And doing another thing feels bad, but it is the right thing to do. Okay, so for example, say that you're learning game and you don't really know how to pull yet, right? But you're getting decent interaction, you want to take phone numbers. Taking the phone number and bouncing feels good, it feels like a success, and your brain is equating it as a good set, as something that went really well. Whereas when you start pushing to actually get the pull, you're going to get a lot of negatives, a lot of bad feedback. You're going to lose numbers that you could have gotten. You're going to take sets that felt like successes, and they're going to end up in failure, right? And so what's going to happen by the natural learning method that we use, the emotional learning method as human beings, we're training ourselves not to do the right behavior, because the right behavior feels bad and the wrong behavior feels good, right? And so if you're doing a pure natural approach without an emphasis on technique or without understanding and without a game plan, you're going to be capping your game in a lot of ways. Right?
Yeah, so I guess that's what I wanted to ask you.
Yeah, so the second one definitely doesn't apply to what we're doing. Because what he's saying, when he's saying natural methods, all he's saying is like, just do what feels good.
Yeah.
But here we're still trying to push it towards some sort of direction.
Okay.
What I mean by that is like, we're still going to end up pulling because the whole the whole adventure frame, like that's a way of pulling. You still need some sort of direction.
Yeah.
But I disagree with the fact that you should construct like techniques and models in order to get there. So I think the means of getting there is through this emotional release and releasing, like, letting go of your shame.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, the counterexamples that I've seen, I think Todd in particular has seen like a lot of pickup guys, and I've seen a lot of counterexamples when I was promoting.
Yeah.
Like the things that they were saying wasn't tight game at all, but they had such a strong, grounded vibe to them, and they're unapologetic
about
about
the promoters.
Yeah, moving moving, like, they're just like, I mean, they'll be the kind of people to just be like, hey, let's go home, like, let's go
Yeah.
fuck. And it's like, how the fuck are they getting away with that? And they're pulling girls from the table who have to meet a certain standard quality.
Yeah.
So in terms of leveling as well, there is one point that I do kind of agree with where you can't. So there are small things that you do have to include if you're talking to like bottle service girls or something like that. You have to be conscious of, because you have to think about what they're saying from their perspective. They're typically getting validated all over the place. So because of that, then you just have to stand out. Now, what Todd would say in this scenario is that you have to push-pull them. And then what Luke would say is that you have to break rapport with them. And these things work because they get the attention of these girls, but you can also get there through a more like emotional approach as well.
Yeah.
Because if you become shameless about teasing, then inherently that will work.
You'll just do those things that they talk about, like,
Yeah.
without even thinking. You're saying.
Yeah, I guess like the teasing one in particular. I mean, I guess there's a distinction to make because the natural approach, the inner game approach that he's talking about is purely just about mindset, where he's saying like if you just like have the right mood, then all the right things will happen. That's not what I'm saying. Like that's one part of it.
Yeah.
The next part is also having a direction. Like you need some sort of direction, and just be in tune with your actual intent in the moment.
Yeah.
Because inherently, like the interactions that go the best for me are the ones where I'm in tune with what I'm feeling like doing. Like when I started pulling, it was because I was like, I'm getting bored. Let's just move somewhere. Like let's just go somewhere.
Yeah.
And then when I started doing that, that's when things started to fall into place for me. And that was purely just based on instinct. That wasn't from any sort of technique. I'm like, I'm just getting bored. Like, let's do something else.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what I mean by like getting in touch with your intuition, and that provides you with the direction. And the way to go down that road is through this emotional process, because you're gonna get to an emotional sticking point. Like if you're gonna start to like try to kiss a girl, start to try to pull a girl,
Yeah.
you're gonna get to these emotional sticking points. You release from that shame, and then you can do it shamelessly.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's like when we go out and I tell you to be physical and everything. It's not. So that would be different from what Todd is talking about with the inner game thing.
Yeah.
Because an inner game coach wouldn't do that. He wouldn't be like, "Hey, try to go kiss that girl." He's like, "No, just feel it. Like if it feels right, then do it." But for me, I'm kind of artificially constructing these situations as well.
Yeah.
So I can bring to the surface those anxieties, and then you deal with those.
Okay.
And that's the inner game part of it, where you deal with those anxieties.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of complicated sometimes.
No, yeah, it's definitely very subtle.
Yeah,
But I think I kind of get what you're saying.
yeah. Because
So by like working on your like kind of like releases, you're
Mhm.
saying we're gonna get rid of the block, like emotional blocks that you get when you're approaching, like escalating,
hmm
like pulling and shit like that, right?
yeah, exactly.
And then the intuition will like work,
The intuition.
like that natural, like way of doing it will work.
Yeah, so basically, like your intuition will guide you towards what you need to do.
Yeah.
Like the timing of everything. Because if you're thinking about it consciously, you're never gonna get the timing right.
Yeah.
Like if you're like, oh, I should move right now, it's always gonna be just a little bit off.
Yeah.
But if instead you're in tune with your intuition and you just act congruently with the way you're feeling,
Yeah.
then that's gonna be perfectly timed.
Yeah.
So yeah, the intuition provides you with the direction. Then you start doing these things and trying to move it forward. And then this is going to bring to surface all these anxieties, and you deal with those anxieties to make it more shameless.
So intuition is gonna provide you with direction and what?
Yeah, so the intuition provides you with direction. Like, it's going to it's going to tell you how to escalate at certain times.
Yeah.
Then it like surfaces these anxieties and these pain points, essentially, but mostly anxieties. And then once you deal with those anxieties, you'll be able to do the actions shamelessly.
Once you deal with the anxieties, you're able to do it shameless. And that's when you time it perfectly.
Yeah, like it's if your intuition is in tune with your feelings, then everything's gonna be perfectly timed, and you're not gonna be thinking. It's essentially like being in state.
Yeah.
That's basically what it is, without shame.
Yep.
That's the end goal. When I watch someone like Kevin or Garrett or Tom, when they're talking to a girl, that's exactly how it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we should just keep finishing the infield, even if you get there a little late.
Okay.
And that's gonna be like bars, I think.
Okay.
It's like a dope prom. Exactly. That's your prom queen, dude. That's good. Yeah, I was actually, he is fantastic. That's why we're prom.
Are there like any interesting things that happen for the first half, or should we go to the second half?
Yeah, let's move to the second part.
Okay.